On the night of December 29, 1944, Major Carroll C. Smith, a 26-year-old veteran of 43 combat missions and 4 confirmed aerial victories, sat inside the cockpit of his Northrop P-61 Black Widow, stationed at Muir Field on the island of Mindoro, Philippines. The Japanese, aware of the strategic significance of the 2 American airfields under construction, had launched a relentless campaign of nightly bombing raids to disrupt the effort. These airstrips were vital to the upcoming Lingayen Gulf invasion. If completed on time, they would offer American fighters the forward range necessary to shield the landing forces. The Japanese understood the stakes, and so did Smith. Since the 418th Night Fighter Squadron's arrival 3 days earlier, Smith and his radar operator, Lieutenant Philip Porter, had become the only line of aerial defense against these incursions. The pressure was immense. Every enemy bomber that slipped through the net risked the lives of thousands of American troops sleeping below and delayed the timetable of a major Pacific operation. Smith's P-61, a formidable aircraft with advanced onboard radar and heavy armament, was the Allies' best answer to Japan's nighttime raiders. The Black Widow wasn't just another plane, it was the first American aircraft specifically built for night fighting. Twin 2,000-horsepower Pratt & Whitney R-2800 engines drove it, while 420mm Hispano M2 cannons packed a devastating punch. But the key weapon was the SCR-720 radar housed in its nose, capable of detecting aircraft in pitch-black skies from miles away, a capability the Japanese were completely unaware of. That night, the radar scope came alive with multiple contacts. At 23:40 hours, Porter called out 4 separate bogies moving through the darkness toward the airfields. Smith had to make fast calculations. There were a dozen enemy bombers in the air. He couldn't possibly intercept them all. Every decision would determine whether lives were saved or lost. Smith knew the limitations of his fuel, ammunition, and time. He would have to hunt fast, shoot accurately, and make every second count. Guided by Porter's commands, Smith vectored toward his first target, a Mitsubishi G4M Betty bomber. Invisible to the naked eye, the bomber appeared on the radar as a pulsing blip. Smith closed the distance silently. At just 350 yards, he fired a 2-second burst. His rounds found their mark, igniting the bomber's fuel tanks. It crashed into the sea at 23:57 hours, 1 down. Just minutes later, Porter guided him to the next. Smith pushed the Black Widow southward at high speed, closing in on another Betty flying at a lower altitude. The bomber was unaware of the hunter behind it. Another burst from Smith's cannons tore through its engines. Flames consumed the aircraft, and it too plunged into the ocean. The time was 19, 2 down. Porter quickly located a third bomber, but this one was different. It wasn't a Betty. It was a Nakajima Ki-49 Helen, a faster, more maneuverable bomber with better defenses. As Smith approached, the Helen twisted through the sky, its pilot well aware that danger lurked. At 375 yards, the bomber's tail gunner opened fire, tracers zipping past Smith's canopy. But Smith had already lined up the shot. A longer burst shredded the Helen's fuselage. It spiraled downward in flames and hit the water at 0029, 3 down. Fuel reserves were dwindling, but there was no pause. Porter called out one more contact, low and fast, closing in on the airfields. This was one of the initial bombers Smith had bypassed, now just minutes away from its target. Smith dove quickly, using gravity to his advantage, closing the range on yet another Betty. With only one chance and one short burst, he made it count. The bomber disintegrated mid-air, plunging to the sea at 0035, 4 kills in just under an hour. Returning to base with dangerously low fuel, Smith and Porter believed the night's mission was complete, but fate had one more test. At 0042, another radar contact appeared, this time a single-engine Nakajima Ki-84 Frankfighter. Fast, heavily armed, and more agile than the P-61, it posed a new threat. Smith had the element of surprise. The Frank pilot was flying blind in the darkness. Smith crept into range and fired his longest burst of the night. The rounds chewed through the fighter's rear. The pilot ejected moments before his aircraft exploded on impact with the ocean at 0046. But victory came at a cost. Smith's fuel reserves were at 15% below safety margins. With no other options, he turned toward Muir Field, hoping to reach the runway in time. Navigation was conducted entirely by radar and dead reckoning. At 0055, disaster struck. The runway lights failed. The landing would have to be blind. Porter's radar altimeter helped guide the descent. Smith lowered the gear, adjusted the flaps, and flew solely by instruments. At 0059, the P-61's wheels struck coral. He brought the plane to a full stop with only 3 minutes of fuel remaining. The crew had flown for just over an hour. In that time, they had intercepted and destroyed 4 bombers and 1 fighter, preventing potential devastation at the airfields. It was the single highest-scoring night for any American night fighter pilot in the Pacific Theater, but Smith wasn't done. Later that day, at 14:30 hours on December the 30th, he and Porter flew a second mission. A Japanese reconnaissance aircraft, another key 84 Frank, was detected. Smith climbed for altitude and dove onto the enemy fighter from above. With a clean 2-second burst, he destroyed it over the ocean. That brought his total to 7 confirmed kills in less than 24 hours, a record unmatched by any other American night fighter pilot during the war. The rest of the 418th Squadron would go on to achieve 18 total aerial victories during their deployment. Smith alone accounted for 39% of those kills. Porter received the Distinguished Flying Cross for his skill as a radar operator, without whom none of the missions would have been successful. The P-61 Black Widow proved itself during those harrowing nights. It was a technological marvel for its time, and in the hands of skilled crews like Smith and Porter, it turned the tide of nighttime warfare. Though Smith's aircraft, marked with kill tallies and worn from battle, was scrapped after the war, the story of what it accomplished in the skies above Morro remains a testament to bravery, precision, and selfless determination. The airfield Smith helped defend went on to support the January 9, 1945 invasion of Lingayen Gulf, launching P-47s and P-51s to support the landings. Engineers later estimated that even a single bombing raid that night could have delayed airfield completion by 2 weeks, possibly jeopardizing the entire operation. Thanks to Smith's efforts, those delays never happened. After the war, Major Carroll Smith returned home, left the military, and lived a quiet life. He never wrote a memoir, never sought fame. His story lives on only in after-action reports, radar logs, and the recollections of the few who knew what he achieved. But his legacy, like that of the Black Widow he flew, represents one of the most extraordinary chapters in the hidden history of aerial combat.